Excuse me, I think my microphone has been off. Thank you. Just a small technical issue. Dames en heren, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest Referendum Party political ad. Now, one of the key messages of the Referendum Party has been, in 2024, you will have to choose between two futures, an African failed state or an African first world country. If you want Cape independence, if you want the first world future, you will have to vote for the Referendum Party. Now, many of you might be going, what the hell does that mean? Like African first world country, I might have been to countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, but how's that going to happen here? An African failed state? Aren't we already living in a failed state? Can things get worse? So it seems like that message to a certain degree was a dud. We should never have used it. It was a disaster. Unless, ladies and gentlemen, what if we told you we got hold of some advanced technology which allowed us to travel into the future, see these two futures playing out before our very eyes? And not just that, we were able to record it so that you can witness it as well. The Referendum Party is proud to present to you two futures. The truth is scarier than fiction.
Viva DA, viva!
The ANC is set to drop below 50% nationally for the first time. This sets the stage for a coalition government.
The EFF have secured 12% of the vote and remain the third largest party in parliament. They are now well positioned to become kingmakers in determining the next government.
In the Western Cape, the DA have maintained their provincial majority. Western Cape Premier Alan Winde said the devolution of power would be the key focus of his government.
The Secretary-General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, assures ANC voters that the party will continue to govern and plans to form a coalition with the EFF.
ANC from the voters are saying to us, we still trust you that you can do better. But at the same time, we are not giving you a decisive victory.
Cyril Ramaphosa was today sworn in as president, with Julius Malema being sworn in as his deputy. The ceremony was delayed for nearly an hour as jubilant EFF members brought Parliament to a standstill.
Advocate Dali Mpofu has been appointed to the Constitutional Court of South Africa, leading to warnings from critics that this development signifies another step towards transforming the court into an institution focused on promoting ideology rather than the rule of law. In other news,
Widespread blackouts were reported across Cape Town last night. It has been blamed on the vandalization of several electrical substations throughout the city. The city has estimated that it will take at least 1 week to restore power to the affected areas.
Our first priority is protecting you, the residents. We will need to be prepared to stay the course, and we are prepared to do so.
in an unexpected late-night political maneuver, the ANC has recalled President Ramaphosa. Several senior cabinet members have resigned in protest. Paul Mashatile has assumed the presidency.
A spokesperson for the government has announced today that the Reserve Bank will be nationalized in order to more effectively align monetary policy with the national democratic revolution.
South Africa's privately owned farmland is set to be nationalized, with 99-year leases being introduced in addition to new racial quotas for land redistribution.
I own my minerals, I own everything that belongs to this continent. Enough is enough.
Premier Alan Winde has formally requested more autonomy for the Western Cape to address what he sees as a dire crisis of crime.
You sound like one of those tourists on the Titanic when someone knocked on your door and said, please get out of your room, get into a lifeboat, this Titanic is sinking, and you pulled out the brochure and you say, but this ship can't sink, I'll stay in my room. And so you just drowned along with that ship as it sank.
Minister of Police Becky Cele responded by saying that the national government has no intention whatsoever to devolve policing powers, which is a national constitutional competency.
Inflation has reached a record high in South Africa, breaking through the 100% mark to reach 112% per annum. The Reserve Bank announced these figures at the late-night press conference last night. The news resulted in a 12% drop in the value of the JSE when it opened this morning. In response, the government has suspended trading until further notice.
South Africa has officially become a failed state. This is according to the Fragile States Index. The decision was made on account of multiple crises facing the country. These include unemployment of more than 50%, negative economic growth, massive capital flight, the collapse of law and order in major cities, and electricity blackouts lasting 12 hours or more a day.
History is calling on you to play your part in rescuing South Africa. It's time to stop the decay and choose a better future for our children and grandchildren. Let's choose a growing economy for jobs and safe communities.
The 2024 election results are now officially in, and they are significant. For the first time in South Africa's democratic era, the ANC no longer have a majority. In the Western Cape, the DA have also lost their outright majority, securing 47.2% of the vote.
The DA has officially announced that it will form a coalition government with the Referendum Party in the Western Cape. The DA have agreed to call a referendum on Cape independence within 12 months, and the Referendum Party have agreed to support the DA's program in government.
We will make sure that the DA government listens to Western Cape voters on Cape independence.
After announcing the referendum several months ago, the decisive day has finally arrived. Over the past few weeks, support for independence has surged dramatically, fueled by the deteriorating situation in South Africa. The leaders of both the Leave and Remain campaigns have delivered impassioned speeches to their voters on this final day.
The DA will never turn our back on the rest of the people of South Africa. We care just as much for you as we care about the people in the Western Cape.
The DA is never going to govern the rest of South Africa. They may say, we can do a better job, we can save all of South Africa, but South Africa doesn't want to be saved by the DA. It's made it very, very clear.
The Western Cape has voted for independence. The results were officially announced by the IEC at 10 o'clock this morning. 58% voted to leave, 42% to remain. Western Cape Premier Alan Winde said he would accept the outcome, which was clearly the democratic will of the Western Cape people.
Because we listen and we revert. That is this Western Cape that we need to build for the future. Every single one of us have a responsibility in doing so.
He announced that he would immediately begin negotiations with the South African government to give effect to the vote.
Vigilante organizations and EFF members attempted to disrupt the proceedings, but were promptly repelled by the Cape Town police force.
At a joint press conference on Thursday, President Ramaphosa reached an agreement that would result in an independent Western Cape. The announcement comes after weeks of international pressure on the South African government to respect the result of the province's independence vote held last month.
But we are going to win, and look, we're a long way down the road. We've already made mayhem politically here, and we're only just getting started.
Independence negotiations have reached a positive conclusion. 22 months after negotiation began, the governments of Western Cape and South Africa have signed a petition paving the way for the formation of Africa's newest country, the Cape of Good Hope.
Dit is die oggend en die eerste dag in die Kaap die Goeie Hoop. Waag om te droom is die lese van die nuwe republiek terwyl 'n gevoel van optimisme deur die nasie sweef.
The Cape Democratic Alliance have won the Cape of Good Hope's inaugural elections, securing 61% of the vote. The party has announced that its immediate priorities in government will be to establish a vibrant, high-growth economic environment, which will encourage investment, create employment, to impose law and order, to end race-based policy once and for all, and to improve international relations.
The announcement was celebrated throughout the Cape, the Western Cape government announcing a public holiday to commemorate the historic occasion.
It is the homecoming revolution. Thousands of South African expats across the world are returning to the Cape of Good Hope.
Emotional scenes as friends and family are reunited.
I'm doing this for my children and I'm doing this for my grandchildren, and that's the biggest thing a granny can do.
How are you going to keep all the people out? Everybody is going to want to go there. Well, doesn't that sound like exactly the sort of country we should be creating?
The Cape of Good Hope has been hailed as Africa's first world country. Improvements in education, health, transport and safety have seen its human development ranking rise rapidly.
This comes after latest figures from CapeStats found that annual economic growth had risen to 11%.
Symbolic of its success, the final shack in the Cape has been demolished.
In response to the announcement, the Cape president stated, 15 years ago, the Cape was at a crossroads. Many people tried to tell us that independence was not possible, but the Cape people believed in themselves, and the rest is now history.
Phil, what did we just witness?
Yeah, thanks, Donald, and thanks for everybody who's joined us. We really hope that you enjoyed our short film there, Two Futures, and I'm sure that as we've done, you've experienced that full range of emotions from in the first future, that fear that just grips the pit of your stomach, because actually as you watch those happenings you realize that they're all too real, that very, very likely is exactly how our future is going to play out without Cape independence, and the frustration of how it could be better. And then as you move into that second future, the future with Cape independence, the future if you vote for the Referendum Party, then suddenly there's this sense of relief, this sense of pride, this sense of hope of this different future that we're fighting for, which just will be inspiring and a wonderful future for all. And I hope, and we hope as a party, that the lesson is Cape independence is not some nice to have. It's now our only option. And a DA government can buy us some time. We know that. They can keep the wolf from the door for a little while. But if, however you cut this cake, and we've done the calculations, within 10 years, not only will the DA not be the Western Cape government, they won't even be able to control a coalition. And ultimately, we will then just end up looking just like the rest of South Africa. And now as we come to this election campaign, interesting enough, this week, what they call the DA squeeze is on. We've got 17 days to go, and the DA is now doing its usual tactics of trying to convince people, look, you mustn't vote for small parties. You may have seen these leaflets they've put out this week. Don't vote for the Referendum Party. They're going to destroy the Western Cape. And of course, this is absolute nonsense. The Referendum Party is fighting to give more power to the Western Cape government. And if the people elect the DA, which they almost certainly will, then voting the Referendum Party will give that DA government more power, the power it desperately needs to act in the best interests of the Western Cape people. And we're going to turn that round, and at the Referendum Party, we're saying, please don't vote DA. We know many, many people want a DA government rather than an ANC government. And at the Referendum Party saying, we get that. We will support the DA and keep the ANC out. We will give you a DA government, but we'll also give you Cape independence. Because the reality is, if we don't get the Cape independence part, then our future very, very soon is going to be bleak. Now, as we said, it's 17 days until the election. 17 days, and we ask one thing, and hope you've enjoyed this movie, and we say, please help us get this film, this 9-minute film that's really profound and shows what's going to happen if we vote for Cape independence and what's going to happen if we don't vote for Cape independence. Now it's our job, for all of us who want Cape independence, to get this video out and share it and share it and share it some more, and ask everybody that shares it to share it on. Let's get this video going viral. Let's get everybody looking at these two futures and understanding how critical, why we absolutely have to get people to vote for the Referendum Party, so that we can put pressure onto the DA to deliver that second future and to avoid the first future. And I think the title sums it up. Sometimes the truth is scarier than reality. Than fiction, sorry. Sometimes the truth is scarier than fiction. Thank you for watching. Back to you, Donald.
Thank you, Phil. So we've got a lot of questions, and thank you for that. That was a brilliant summary of I think what a lot of people should take home from this video. From Yusuf Yepi. How will the Referendum Party counter the DA's narrative that voting for a small party is a wasted vote?
Now, look, thank you, Yusuf, and I'm really glad you've asked that question. And I think look, this is the traditional DA tactic at the end to try and scare people into, look, hang on a second, we're not going to make an argument against Cape independence. We're just trying to scare people into what's going to happen if you don't vote for the DA, and it's something we're going to have to counter, and we are going to come with a specific campaign that we'll push. And we just have to reassure people, look, our proposition's simple. This isn't a logical argument. What are the Referendum Party promising? Promising three things. Cape independence is essential to our future. It's the only future that really makes sense for us. For now, we need a DA government rather than an ANC government in the Western Cape, but we have to force that DA government to call a referendum on Cape independence. So there can be no possible logical reason that says a vote for the Referendum Party is going to harm the DA because we're going to support the DA. What the DA worries about is that a vote for the Referendum Party is going to force the DA to listen to the Western Cape people. And that's a message that we just have to keep promoting and it's there, it's in the manifesto, it's on our website, it's in just about every video we've made. So there's no logic to that. We just have to keep on fighting that fight. And obviously the DA is going to continue to put out this disinformation, really, in our case. But I mean, how we've taken that as a party is at the point that we've started to see this. This week we saw these leaflets came out from the DA where they specifically, for the first time, named the Referendum Party. Well, for us, we've taken that as a positive symbol and a sign that the DA feel they are starting to have something to worry about from the Referendum Party, which is simply great news because we're not going to remove them from power, but we do intend to force them to call this referendum on Cape independence.
Thank you, Phil. From Brynley Harris, will the DA be forced into coalition with the Referendum Party? What if they formed a coalition with other smaller parties who don't support Cape independence?
No, look, great question. And obviously, look, we have to be honest and say nobody knows what the outcome is going to be at the end of the election. So when we're making our calculations and we're saying what we can do, these are sort of based on calculations based on what's happened in previous years, based on scenarios that we've played out, and they're as accurate as we can get them. Now, of course, we can't force the DA into a coalition with us. But actually, there are very, very few parties that the DA can go into coalition with. It's not going to go into a coalition in the Western Cape with the ANC or the EFF. That would be disastrous for them. It's not going to go into coalition with the PA. It's already said so. And obviously, there's a lot of bad blood between them. Potentially, they could go into a coalition with the ACDP or Action SA. Although particularly with Action SA, there's not the greatest of relationship things. But they're traditional partners in the Western Cape, their biggest coalition partner, because bear in mind the DA is already in 13 coalitions, I think it is, across the Western Cape, and their biggest coalition partner is the Freedom Front Plus, who have signed an agreement with the Referendum Party and Cape Exit, the NPO, and the three of us have signed an agreement to work together. So whether they want to go to the Freedom Front Plus or whether they want to go to us, they're going to have to work with one of us. So, the facts are very much in our favour. It will be difficult for the DA to form a coalition government without us, but there is no guarantee. Ultimately, if we end up in Parliament as an opposition, then obviously we'll have to just play a different role, but we'll still drive Cape independence for all we're worth. But our belief is if we can get the DA under 48%, which effectively takes the ACDP out of play, then the DA will have little choice but to form a coalition government with RP and the Freedom Front Plus.
Okay, next question from Sellout Scout. How can a voter in Gauteng who is passionate about independent Western Cape make a contribution to the Referendum Party?
Fantastic, thank you, Silas. That's a wonderful, and we know we've got a lot of support. In fact, one of the things I have personally argued with the DA many times when they sort of talk about their voters outside of the Western Cape being opposed to Cape independence, and I've always said to them, listen, go and poll your voters. I think you're going to find there's an awful lot of support for Cape independence outside of the Western Cape, and that's certainly our experience. Now, you can vote for the Referendum Party in Gauteng. You can't vote on the provincial ballot or the regional ballot, but you can vote for the Referendum Party on the national ballot. So what can you do? Please go and vote for us in Gauteng, and we've already got a good number of voters. We've got a branch in Pretoria. We've got supporters in Centurion. And many other places too, I'm sure. So yes, you can vote for us on the national ballot, and that will be a really important sign. It'll be a very, very strong message when the Referendum Party gets considerable support from Gauteng and KZN, where I think it will get good support from both.
Awesome. Another question from Yusuf Yepi, I believe. How do you get across to voters that Cape Independence is an inclusive movement for all Kaapenaars?
Yeah, really important question. And I look, I mean, all we can kind of do is walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think you can pull out the wool over somebody's eyes for a week or a month. We formed the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, which is the sister organisation and effectively was behind the formation of the Referendum Party 4 years ago. And I hope now we're starting to walk that walk. What have we got? Our leadership team is multiracial. Our support base is multiracial. Our candidates are multiracial, and none of that's with quotas or anything else. That's all of that is just happening naturally. Non-racialism is a founding principle. It's one of the, we have very, very few policy positions, but non-racialism is an absolute essential for us. And I think we just have to keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And I think ultimately people see you for who you are. And we've certainly seen with polling that over the years, support has really, really grown. Into the last poll that for example, that support amongst the coloured community was now higher than amongst the white community. And we've also seen huge growth even amongst black voters, and we're seeing that even in our own team. We've got some really brilliant black candidates, black members on our exco who are just making an incredible contribution to the party. But look, obviously we because of what we're fighting for, people call us racist all the time, and we just march forward and ignore that. And what does it say? By their deeds shall you know them. People will judge us by what we actually do, and anybody who gets close to us understands that we're a non-racial organisation, profoundly so, and we're fighting for a future for all, and we've just got to keep repeating that message over and over and over again.
Thank you, Phil. Next question from Alan Faria. How will you ultimately get the ANC and the EFF to accept the outcome of a positive vote in the referendum? I assume a leave vote. How will they accept that result?
Yeah, look, a good question. And I think probably the EFF will be a harder proposition than the ANC. So I won't sort of go over everything again, because if you're interested in the sort of the legal aspects of this, I made a very, very detailed legal video, which was about 35 or maybe even 40 minutes long, that we released this week. It's on Twitter, it's on our Facebook page, and go and have a look, and you'll see there. And because people were kind of saying, look, this will never happen, it's not legally possible, the ANC can just ignore it, we packed out over a prolonged period all of the issues, how it sits under international law, the case law, and the significance. And this is one of the questions. So if you're interested in the law, if anyone's interested in the law, go and have a look at that video. Get yourself a cup of coffee, because it's it's a lengthy one. But it's important that people understand that we're not just making this data up. And one of the key quotes from there comes from the Quebec judgment, which is one of the seminal texts in international law that deals with independence referendums. And there it's made very, very clear that in a democracy, you just cannot ignore the outcome of a democratic will of the people, or a referendum, which is the democratic will of the people. And that judgment was then quoted extensively by the UK Supreme Court in Scotland's case. So that principle is now quite well established in law. I think probably the ANC will be subject to an awful lot of internal or international pressure, and that I think probably will be the deciding factor that'll make it very, very difficult for the ANC to effectively become the colonizing force in the Western Cape, because it would be, it would be such an anathema to everything that in theory they stand for and the image that they have internationally, that I think they would really struggle as much as they'd hate it. I think we practically think that on the ground, the more of the challenge would be the EFF mobilizing people on the ground, and that's certainly something that we would have to plan for is that start stage of the process. But I think legally there's not really an issue. I think it's there's no obligation to accept it, but there's so much case law that it also is almost impossible not to accept.
Interesting. Next question from Wim Grobler. You've presented two outcomes, which essentially invite a fair response and choice. What about a positive economic strategic policy vision being presented to invite votes? Well, I think, at least to my mind, that the second future was a very positive message, but I don't know. Perhaps I missed something. What do you think, Phil?
Well, no, look, look, it's difficult, and you can't get everything to everybody. I agree with you. I think the second one is a really hopeful and positive message. I've gone on record many times, and did last week when we had a debate with Premier Windy and others at the AfriForum. What do I call it? Show. And also it's going out again this week, and we've targeted this. Said, look, what should it look like? Well, we should be looking at 10% economic growth and sub 10% unemployment, and that then is a really hopeful message that should be able to show people what future really is possible. Now, when it comes down to the economics itself, we have done some work, and if you go onto our website and also on the CIG, you'll see some of the work that we've done on economic viability. Unfortunately, there was the AfriForum did an economic impact study, but they've never released it to the public, which is a real shame because it's hugely positive for Cape independence. So the economic benefits to the Western Cape are hopefully obvious to all. But I mean, if I sum it all up, the Western Cape, 35% of the Western Cape's income subsidises incompetence and corruption in the rest of South Africa, and we will be then 35% better off overnight as an independent country. And that's before we start factoring in that we can suddenly have sound economic policies, a business-friendly environment, and we can start moving forward and running this country properly.
Phil, my own question, which I see a lot peeping up here and there, is what do you say to those people? I don't want to lose the Springboks. I want to keep the Springboks. I mean, what do you say to those people?
Well, maybe we get the Springboks. Who says that South Africa gets the Springboks and we lose them? Look, everybody, the Springboks are close to everybody's heart. They're very close to my heart, and we'll have to find a solution. We'll have a very good rugby team, whatever happens, and I think there are all sorts of options we can look at. But we also have to be realistic that creating a future for generations to come is the most important thing, and then we'll make sure that we have a wonderful rugby team that's amazing to watch, and it may be the Springboks, maybe it's not the Springboks, but hell, it's going to be good.
Yeah, well, I would be interested to see a South African based Western Cape rugby team that's not restrained from quotas. I think that will be an interesting team to watch.
No, well, look, I think Well, I think in fairness to the Springboks, I think we've moved past the section of quotas in international rugby. We still have them in our school sports, which is a real shame. So I wouldn't. Well, yeah, I don't think there's many quota spielers in the Springbok team. I think we can, all rightly proud in there. And it's interesting. One of the examples we often talk about. Many people don't know that the Irish rugby team actually is two countries together in one. So it's that Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and Southern Ireland, which is a separate independent country. The both countries together collectively have the thing. So maybe that's an option. I don't know, but I think like we'll have to deal with that when we get there. But whatever say, we'll have a strong team either way.
From Marco, will we be seeing an RP ABC event or coalition? I don't know how coalition is going to work, but it's probably perhaps an event.
Well, so let's just look at, obviously, these things are always sensitive. Let me assure you that we're in contact with each other. We wanted to reach out to them as soon as they came out for Cape Independence, because we're already speaking to the other KZN Independence Party. But actually, in fact, before we even got to the ABC got to us. So you definitely will see this collaboration. And effectively, we've now kind of got, if we go to this wider context of self-determination, we've now got three major groups pushing for effectively the breakup of the unitary state in whatever form: the Cape Independence Movement, the KZN Independence Movement, and then Afrikaner self-determination. And actually, all of those groups are in touch with each other, clearly, there's a huge benefit in these different groups in collaborating to take power away from the centre of Pretoria, because it takes away a lot of the issues. So, for example, ABC is fantastic for us because it just helps us show, look, this isn't all about white supremacy. This isn't about racism, because here's a group that's predominantly black in a different part of the country wanting exactly the same thing as us. And ironically for them, it's great to have people like us fighting, because they can say, look, this isn't just about naked tribalism. This is actually about just trying to be governed according to our democratic will. So it's very, very useful to have both. I saw Khatib's earlier comment, so thank you so much. I saw your family was voting too, so I appreciate it. It's it's just magnificent to see that such a actually I can't remember who asked the question about diversity, but even just in our comments, you can see how diverse and how inclusive this whole fight for Cape Independence is, it's truly special. We really can create this amazing first world country where we can all prosper and in many ways create what we should have created in 1994 but failed to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah, the suggestion from Wim Grobler is interesting. A Stormbox as a rugby team. I think people might think that's like a blitzkrieg. It's like Germany all over again, but but yeah, that's
Stormbox sound good to me. Then I'm a Stormers fan.
Okay, let's throw up this question from HSHP. There's a lot of letters. Okay, is the Referendum Party experiencing any kind of sabotage from the ANC central government? If yes, can you tell us more?
No, is the honest answer. Thus far, I have to say, to their credit, and I think we are extremely critical of the ANC national government. We don't like it one little bit, but I have to say, other than, look, we've had problems with people taking down our posters, and we've had problems with so I say minor stuff. But no, and one thing I'll give South Africa its credit, and I think we should be fair to this, as a party, we've come along, we established the CIAG, then established the Referendum Party. We operate openly without any great harassment. I'm told that the security services listen into our calls, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. I would be surprised if they didn't. They'd want to know what we were doing. But actually, no. The honest answer is, at this point in time, it's broadly fair, and we haven't really been harassed in any way. And I must give credit to South Africa's government for that. They've played fair, at least up until now.
Thank you, Frol. From Edgar Nelson. Good evening. How would I benefit as a coloured who have and is still working and contributing to the Western Cape economy, and how will you fix the education in this province? Because what is happening for some time now regarding to the students coming in from other parts of the country, because there's no place or space left in our schools for coloureds. I assume that's generally a immigrant situation from others from outside of the Western Cape.
No, look, thank you, Edgar, and thank you for asking the question, because it's an important one. I don't know how much how much people have seen of what I've done over the years, but I have a huge heart for the so-called coloured people. I enjoy them. First of all, I've got friends from that community, or communities, because not one great coloured community, and I've regularly spoken out on issues that affect coloured people, most notably at the Press Club. When we led the last march, we deliberately went to District 6 and led prayers there, and it's absolutely crucial that we create a better system, because one of the things that I've spoken about when I speak out is to say, and I think people often don't understand the impact of government policies, particularly on the coloured community, who in many ways suffer more than any other community because they've confined predominantly to the Western Cape. So when you have this sort of demographics that are used, they have a disproportionately bad effect on coloured communities. And so, illegal mass migration has had a huge effect on coloured people, certainly around schools and placements. Affirmative action has had a terrible effect, as we know from the Constitutional Court. And these things absolutely have to be addressed, and we shouldn't mince our words on those. Obviously, as a party, we're a single issue party. What we want to do is we want to put the Western Cape people in charge of their own destiny. The largest single group ethnically in the Western Cape is the coloured people. So in many ways, Cape independence, more than anything else, is going to empower the coloured people. So people often say, well, how do coloured people know that white people like myself are not going to just get Cape independence and then take advantage of them just to get independence? And ironically, I often say, well, the fear really logically should be the other way around. How do I know? At the end of the day, as a white person, I'm going to be in the smallest ethnic group in an independent Western Cape, and actually, white voters are going to be at the mercy of coloured voters, and black voters, and not the other way around. One of the things that I say to people who then express that fear is, one of the amazing thing about the coloured community is the only community in South Africa who historically have voted across racial grounds and based on merit. One of the reasons, and one of the major reasons why the Western Cape is better governed than the rest of South Africa, is because coloured voters have made much better decisions than people in the rest of the province. So I'm all behind getting a fairer deal for coloured people. Is absolutely essential. But the answer is not what am I going to do about that, because actually it's not going to be my decision. The question is, what are you going to do about that? And I think that's for us getting a government. And the key issue here in the Western Cape is that the government doesn't have the authority to make the decisions that need to be made. It can't control economic policy. It can't control its own borders. It can't deal with that illegal migration. There are so many things it just doesn't have. It can't control the police. And at the wrong end of very very of those decisions are poor old coloured voters who once again are getting the rough end of the stick. So one of the things I'm most excited about in an independent Western Cape is for the first time ever in history is coloured voters getting a fair crack of the whip.
Okay. Next question, sort of an elephant in the room, I would say. What happens if the PA gets voted in for the Western Cape? And let me add to that question. There's this sort of boogeyman that a lot of people in the Western Cape have now gotten used to. Gator McKenzie and the Patriarch Alliance. I mean, we're getting SMSs, calls every day from Democratic Alliance about Mr. McKenzie. He's promising to form a coalition with the EFF, the ANC, the EFF. As Referendum Party supporters, what should we do about this? Is this something we should take into account? What should we take about this?
No, look. So I look. I'm going to pick my words carefully, but I often describe Gayton as a supernova. He's going to burn very brightly, very quickly, and then burn himself out. Look, arguably he is tapping into a vein of frustration in the Western Cape, and he's doing it very, very effectively. The bottom line is he's currently polling at around somewhere between 4% and 6% of the vote. He has got absolutely. He says he's going to be the premier. There's absolutely zero prospect whatsoever that Gator Mackenzie is going to be the Western Cape Premier. It's not even going to come close. Ultimately he will end up being he's going to have seats. He's going to have a significant power base. He's certainly tapped into something, and like everybody, they have their strengths and their weaknesses. I personally would be concerned were Gayton to be the Premier of the Western Cape, but I don't think we have to fear about that. And I think at this point in time, and I've said it on record, that the PA are currently helping Cape independence greatly, even though they don't support Cape independence. And how are they doing that? Well, they are weakening the DA and potentially pushing the DA into the arms of a Cape independence coalition. So if we are pressurizing the DA from one side, then the PA and Mackenzie are pressing them from the other side, and ultimately the DA and the PA cannot stand each other. There's zero prospect of them working together, so actually all Mackenzie's doing is pushing the DA into our hands, and I'm very grateful for him for doing that.
Phil, to add to that question, do you think the DA will fall below 50%? As a general question, do you think that will happen in 2024?
Well, I think so. Look, obviously, we desperately hope so, because it's a critical part of our plan. At this point in time, they're not polling it below 50%, but they're polling within the margin for error of that. So it's touch and go, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. So we're now within the margin error of polling. We're now within the area where the outcome we most want is possible, and that's a nice situation to be going into there. It certainly isn't taken for granted, and the DA are very, very good traditionally at sort of consolidating their vote, and that's something we're all going to have to work very, very hard at, because the DA will then constantly work on this fear campaign of trying to sort of scare people who are thinking of voting for another party to sort of go back to that safe haven of the DA. And that's, we're going to have to tackle that as a party, and then our followers, please just help us with that. We've got to get people to stay the course. We mustn't allow the DA to bully us out of voting for the Cape independence that we want. And that's because of what happened. The DA are very, very good at doing that. And what happens is now they don't vote for a small party, and then after the elections are over, then they use that thing they asked for just to give it as a reason not for Cape. Well, look how many people voted for Cape independence. How many times have we heard them criticise the Cape Independence Party, and they never mentioned that they did deal with us at the CIAG before the 2021 elections to avoid that. So and what we've got to be very, very careful of is that we don't have people think, because we see it on our social media, people sometimes saying, and more often than I'd like, look, let's just vote for the DA now and deal with Cape independence after. And I want to scream and go, look, if you vote for the DA now, there won't be any Cape independence after. They're going to take your vote and they're going to beat us over the head with it for the next 5 years. And if you want Cape independence, you absolutely have to go and vote for Cape independence.
And I think it might be worth mentioning that John Steenhuisen at the BizNews conference said that this might be our last free and fair election. If things go south nationally, if there's an ANC, EFF, MCO coalition, whatever you throw in that pot, this might be our last free and fair election. So if you think you can vote for Cape independence after this election, you might be 100% wrong. So this might, I think one of our slogans is no of nooit. I mean, do you really want to take that chance?
Donald, can I just jump in? I saw there's a question. I'm not sure whether you sort of skipped it because you thought it was a contentious one, but I see there's been a couple of questions about funding, and I think it's a fair question for people to ask. So let me just reassure people. And often what I read between this, people want to know, are we in somebody's pockets? And sometimes that comes out of conspiracy. Are we somehow linked with the Illuminati so fundraising is an absolute nightmare for any political party. We run this party on a relative shoestring, not an absolute shoestring. And how are we funded? Well, we're funded by a mixture of business people who are sympathetic to the idea of Cape independence, but often people then who don't particularly want to publicly show their face in terms of, often if they're doing business, particularly if they're doing business with the government, then they don't want to be seen to be funding the independence movement. But there's nothing untoward there, and I can just give you my word on that. This is just decent, ordinary South Africans like you and I, who want to create a better thing. And then we've got about 1,000 individual donors of people who give us like 100 rand a month, and the mixture of that of our own supporters who are funding us, and then a handful of business people who fund us. That's how we're funded. There's no government from there's no money from any other countries. We're not given anything by a state. We're definitely not sponsored by anybody's intelligence. It's ordinary people who funds the Cape independence movement, people who desperately want Cape independence, and you can be absolutely assured that there's no hidden agendas. Hopefully you've got to know us now over the years that we've been around. Hopefully you've got to know me. I don't think anybody else, you won't find a straighter die than myself. If we had anything to hide, I wouldn't be involved. That's not our style at all. But there's, there really is. I know that from time to time people say I'm working for MI6 and I'm funded by this or funded by that. Frankly, it's not. Most people involved in the Referendum Party are unpaid. The few of us that are paid, because we've got so busy that we can't do anything else, are paid extraordinarily badly, and we do it because we love it. We're not doing this to get rich. We're doing this, and nobody's getting rich at the Referendum Party. We're doing this because we desperately want to create a future for our children, and anyone who's close to the Referendum Party will just find what an amazing bunch of people who are just activists. We're not politicians, we're activists who and it's an extraordinary group of people. I mean, it's inspiring, it's humbling, it's just a very, very special place to be, and it's definitely not about money.
Thank you, Phil, for raising that question. I might have missed it. That's 180 people now watching live. I might have missed it in all of these comments. Next question from Nita Vessels. Have you pulled in the support of AfriForum to help you, as they also support Western Cape independence?
So I was, interesting enough, this week, so we have a very good relationship with AfriForum. Look, it would be unfair to sort of, AfriForums are an organisation that basically is fighting for communities, predominantly Afrikaans communities, to do more for themselves. But we're very, very close to AfriForum because there's a huge overlap, and I think I mentioned earlier, the same as we are with the Zulus. Excuse me, and the same as it would be with anybody else who's fighting for self-determination. I was up at AfriForum this week. I did an interview with Callie Creel. It'll be airing, I think, next week on AfriForum TV. I am speaking at the AfriForum National Congress later this year in August. So yes, we enjoy a great relationship with AfriForum. AfriForum don't support Cape independence. They don't have a position one way or the other. It's not. I think they have an awful lot of members, and they've checked. So an awful lot of their members support Cape independence, so they're certainly not against it. They're very, very sympathetic towards any form of self-determination. But yes, we have a good relationship with them and with everybody else who's fighting for. And we're constantly reaching out. By the way, we reach out habitually to any organisations and parties who are fighting for some form of self-determination, because frankly, we all benefit from working closely together.
Phil, on that note, I believe Mr. Premier Alan Winde, in a recent debate, and probably in many of the debates, has said that he does not have the power to call a referendum. He said that the Cape Forum has brought this to I believe, the Constitutional Court, and has said, the Constitutional Court has said this should be resolved by legislation, the Parliament. It's not up to him to call a referendum. What would you say to his argument?
Well, I'm going to stop short of calling him a liar. I'm going to say that he is being deliberately misleading people with his choice of words, and I think knowingly so. So first of all, Alan Winde had 2 legal opinions. And how do I know that? One legal opinion he got from his own legal team that said he needed to fix this referendum legislation. The other one was provided by somebody else, and I was in the room when it was provided, and I have a copy of the legal opinion. So I know what he's got, and so I know he has a legal opinion on his desk that says he can call a referendum on Cape Independence or anything else. And I have the legal opinion myself. I've read it. I know it. I'm familiar with it. That's not in the public domain, so therefore I have to and I'm always very respectful of those things. You can then go to Politics Web or to the Daily Friend, and Martin van Staden, the attorney, wrote an article that says why Alan Winde can call a referendum on Cape Independence, and you can read the article, and that basically lays out pretty much the same legal case as the one that he's got. Joe Emilio actually took that. He spent some time with Martin van Staden, turned it into a video. So if you'd rather watch a video, go and have a look at Joe Emilio's video on that. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Alan Winde can call a referendum on Cape Independence. And as Martin van Staden put it, in what world would you take the constitutional right? Because it's absolutely clear in the Constitution that says the Premier can call a referendum. And then you yourself go to court and delay that for years while you try to check whether you have or haven't got the right the Constitution absolutely gives you. Why would you not just go and call the referendum and if the ANC want to take you to court to try and stop the referendum, let them. So this is double talk from the DA. They don't want to call a referendum on Cape Independence, and this talk around the referendum is actually an excuse. And I was duped, let me be honest. We bought into let's change the legislation, and I looked back and I realized it was the DA that convinced us the legislation needs to be changed. When I spoke to the lawyers, it never did. And actually this week at AfriForum, Alan Winde said if you go to the registration, it says clearly the Referendum Act that says only the president can call a referendum. What he doesn't tell you is if you go to the Interpretation Act, the new Constitution, it says you can, where it says the word president, you can substitute it with the word premier. So actually, he just it's really, really sneaky. It's really dishonest. But bottom line is yes, Alan Winde can call a referendum if he wants to. He doesn't want to, so that's what the situation is. So any reason why they can stall and delay it suits the DA just fine.
Interesting, controversial. Phil, I think we're just about 51 minutes. Is there anything you want to leave our viewers with? Just a bit more than 2 weeks until the election. If you want to say anything to our Referendum Party supporters.
Let's just come full circle to where we said at the end of the video. Please, this is a really powerful video. You've watched it. You've enjoyed it. Let's get this video out there, please. Everybody here, go put it on. Take this video. It'll be on YouTube. I don't think it's on YouTube now, so we'll put it on YouTube and put it into this link. We'll load it up now because there was an earlier version and we made a couple of edits. So, but tonight it'll be on YouTube. Get the link, go and share it. Please put it on your Facebook, put it on your Twitter, send the link to the YouTube to all of your friends. Let's see how many people can watch this video, because everybody who sees this video is somebody who then potentially becomes another Referendum Party voter. We've got 17 days left, and actually our future hangs in the balance in these 17 days. Let's go. Let's get many people seeing this. And we're going to have a lot of content on social media, obviously activism too. So please just help us in these last 17 days to get the Referendum Party front and centre. We've got a nice little stunt on Thursday, so keep your eye out on that. Hopefully we'll be back in the media on Thursday. We've got something that we're going to do in Cape Town that should get people talking about the Referendum Party again. So keep your eyes out for that. But otherwise, please just help us to share this message as far and wide, and let's get everybody voting for the Referendum Party.
Thank you, Phil. Absolutely, we're gonna Referendum Party is gonna pursue that stunt as you mentioned, and you're probably gonna hear from that a lot. You're gonna probably hear a lot from Referendum Party going forward. The last 2 weeks doesn't mean we're not gonna go silent. This is full. All the videos, all the social media content we've created. This 2 weeks, you're gonna hear a lot from us. So stay tuned. you're going to hear a lot from us. And by all means, you're probably going to hear another live session very soon. So thank you very much for joining this next political campaign ad and for many more to come. Thank you.